You know that quiet thought you have sometimes? I think I'm capable of more than this. Not more ideas, not more knowledge, just more execution. The truth is, most people don't have an information problem. They have a gap between what they know they could do and what they actually do consistently. And that gap, well, it's where people get stuck. It's where energy leaks, confidence erodes, and potential quietly goes unused. Criag Harper has spent decades inside that space, working with high performers, watching what separates the ones who stay stuck from the ones who actually move forward.
I ask myself this question every day. In terms of what I want to do, be, create, and change today, where should my attention be? Because we waste so much cognitive, emotional, physical energy on shit that doesn't serve us.
And it's not talent, it's not luck. It's a willingness to do what most people avoid. Discomfort, repetition, and brutal self-reflection. Criag is here to give you a reset on how you think about effort, how you think about potential, and what it really takes to perform. Not occasionally, but consistently. So if you feel like you've been hovering at 60 or 70% in your work, your health, or your life, this one will hit a nerve. This is the show that unlocks potential for everyday life. This is Performance Intelligence.
I love catching up with you. I love your show. I love everything about you. So it's good to get together. And we should probably get together in 3D one day and see what that's like. But for now, we'll deal with the virtual kind of version.
Mutual Admiration Society. We were chatting earlier this week about this topic and we both lit up. Would be remiss of us as middle-aged male podcast hosts sitting here thinking we had our shit together all the time. Why don't you lead? And I got an example as well.
Well, yeah. I wish I was middle-aged, by the way. I think you've been. If I live to 194, I'm middle-aged.
Run with it, mate. Run with it. Because I'll frame this. I look at you. Your podcast is out of this world. You have millions of downloads. You run courses and you put a notice and it fills up straight away. You've written books. You've done TV. You've been a strength and conditioning coach for some very high-profile teams. You've trained big names. Like, if you look at that extrinsic or that external measure of success, you're killing it.
Yeah, thank you. Do you know what? I was really fascinated with this since I was a kid. I didn't know, the performance capacity gap, as Andrew said, everyone. It's really like what you're currently doing. What's your current output? What are your outcomes? Like, where are you at with pick a variable in your life, whether or not it's how fit or strong or what you're doing with your dough or your relationships or how your business is going. And it can be any component of the human experience. And then what is your potential? I think this is one of the few times that I advise people for comparison. It's like we're not comparing Andrew with Criag or vice versa or you with anyone else, but what we're comparing is current you with potential you or possible you. Like, what is possible for me? And I think everyone thinks about that at some stage. And so my genesis story with this is, I won't bang on about it too long because I've done it too many times, but when I was the fat 14-year-old and I was, morbidly obese, fattest kid in my school, and then over a course of not that many months, 4 or 5, I totally transformed my body, more motivated by what I didn't want to be than what I was hoping to be. I just didn't want to be picked last anymore. I just didn't want to be socially invisible. I didn't want to be made fun of. All those things which were a compelling force for me. But when I lost weight and I got quite fit and quite strong and quite healthy and, with what I had to work with, my genetics, I would say I started to get somewhere in the ballpark of optimizing close to what I had. But what the biggest thing for me was this kind of new awareness or understanding of my capacity. Like, even though I'm not super smart or I don't have brilliant, amazing genetics or I'm not a great athlete or I'm whatever, I'm not a creative genius or all of these things that I can recognize without beating myself up, but just go, well, Criag, you don't have awesome genetics, but what can you do with those genetics? What can you do with that mind that you have? Maybe you're clever in a different way. Maybe your brilliance, if you have it, doesn't exist in the classroom, and all of that stuff about what can I do versus what am I doing? And so the biggest light bulb or revelation for me in the changing my body process wasn't even about my body. It was about getting a glimpse into my own potential and my own possibilities. And for this conversation, my own capacity.
That's young to have that awareness, because a lot of people that you and I would work with don't have that awareness in their 50s, 60s and even beyond.
Well, I didn't think of it I wasn't.
You weren't quoting the performance capacity gap back.
No, but I mean, if I was Cragifying it, I'd go, fuck, how did I do that? And well, if I can do this, then what else can I do? And there was no ego in that. There was just excitement and awareness, and I guess a new level of understanding about how I'd thought for 14 years and how I was starting to think about myself and my possibilities now. And so I went, well, I can't have better genetics than Andrew, but I can out-train Andrew. I can eat better than Andrew. I can sleep better. I can try harder. I can put up with more pain. All of those things I can just choose. I can recover better. I can learn more. I can educate myself. I can build a relationship with food that I didn't have before, because my relationship with food was horrendous. My relationship with my own kind of emotions, like there was no bigger hater of me than me. I'm like, well, that actually doesn't work well. Like there was so much self-loathing and self-doubt and self-sabotage. I'm like, why am I doing that? And then not a redundant question, why am I doing that? No, actually, why am I doing that? What is that about? And I think, better questions can lead to much greater self-awareness and better choices and better behaviors and better outcomes. So, back in the day, I didn't articulate it like this, and I didn't even know there was a thing called the performance capacity gap. And I couldn't really explain to you what success was or what potential was, but I just knew that the biggest variable, I didn't know what a variable was, but I knew that the biggest thing that was going to make a difference in my life was actually me, not any external kind of force,
Do you think, and it's hard to go back when you were 14, but if you can try and transport back to the feelings you had, the emotions you had, the thoughts you had, do you think, because you went through that hardship and it would have been tough, and I've heard you talk about this a lot in the podcast, that you just had pain, you were just sick of that and went, fuck it, I'm going to tap into something to prove everyone wrong? Or was it to prove yourself right? Or was there some different motivation?
I was probably motivated more through insecurity and fear. I didn't want to prove anyone wrong, really. Once I did that, it was almost like this constant question, even probably till now. But it's like when I set up Australia's first personal training centre, and this is, people go, oh, everyone hated on it wasn't that. It was just that nobody really thought that was a thing. I mean, we're talking 1986 when I first started thinking of this 40 years ago, and I didn't open it until 1990. So it took 4 years to go from concept to reality. But, all of that where I thought, oh, well, I actually think I could do this. I think, and of course, someone would have done it if I didn't do it. So there's no kind of boasting in this, but trying to understand, well, what can I do if I can get out of my own way? And even if it doesn't work, that's okay. I'm going to learn. I'm going to grow. I'm going to evolve. I put up a post the other day about my first corporate speaking gig in inverted commas. I also happened to be 26, which was when I opened my first center. And I was fucking terrible. I spoke to 20 guys at a timber yard. I spoke in the lunchroom. I spoke for half an hour. I got paid $50. I prepared for 3 weeks and I crashed and burned horribly. I was so bad, and they couldn't get out of there quick enough. They only stayed there because the boss was there and they felt compelled, right?
But can I say, as a fellow speaker, for your first gig, to be in a timber yard with a bunch of blokes named Bluey, Moose, Kanker, Biffo and Smash, they were thinking, who's this young punk buffed idiot? That's a tough introduction. Good introduction, but a tough one.
But here's the thing, and I know this sounds cliche, but when we get past the cheese and the self-help and the fluff and the motivation, and of course there's good and bad pain, but for me, that was a good pain. That was good discomfort. That was good. I learned a bunch even in that about what to do, what not to do, how much stories do I share and how much information and how do I build rapport and connection and what language should have I used and what did it gives you a chance to figure out what went okay, what went terrible and what I would never do again. But you can't get good at what you're not doing. But the problem is that people want to be excellent without the pain. People want to be at the top of the mountain without fucking climbing the mountain. Right? So, dude, of course, climbing the mountain sucks, literally and metaphorically. But how do you build if you're not super talented like me, how do you get good? How do you become exceptional? And not just for the sake of being that, but how you become exceptional is by doing what most people won't do. So your behavior is exceptional. Like what will most people do? I tell you what, they will not work as hard as I worked or for as long as I worked. They will not deal with the discomfort that I dealt with. Some will, and some will do it better, but the majority won't. And I hate to say this, but I'm seeing this more and more in 2026, where if I said to an audience of 200 people, put up your hand if you want to be more resilient, everyone puts up their hand. And then you go, who's going to do the work to create that? Fucking nobody. Everyone dives under their seat. And that's because...
Give me an app. Isn't there something you can download on that
is there
app?
a pill? Is there a powder? Is there and that's not everyone, of course, but I think it's so important that we are prepared to, and it doesn't need to be an hourly practice, but go, you know what? And the metaphor, of course, or the analogy is in the gym. How do you get strong? You work against resistance. And we've spoken about this. You do hard shit and the byproduct is you get strong, literally. How do you build muscular endurance and aerobic endurance? You do hard shit. How do you build capacity? Do hard shit. How do you build resilience? You do hard shit. And so it's not like this is a no cost situation. So that whole thing is spilled over into the rest of my life, mate. And I get more excited about other people's potential than mine these days.
But you're living it yourself through helping others. That's called being on purpose. Yeah, you find purpose. You find something bigger than you, excites the living daylights out of you, and it's future focus. I can totally see you're on purpose, and you explain that story. It helps me understand a bit more because I've listened to your podcast a bunch of times, lots and lots of times. And when I hear you say, "I was a fat kid from Maui, I'm not really great," I used to sometimes think, "Oh, is Harp just downloading that because he's always been this naturally gifted dude?" You know what I'm saying? You probably had some other people say this as well. That hardship in you forged a hardiness, to quote our mate Paul Taylor, and then you had the physical and psychological resources to tap into it. This is hard as a parent, and any parent or people who are involved with kids in extended capacity will know this. What do you want your kids? You want them to be loved and to be in a good environment and to feel good. What's the worst thing you can do for your kids? Everything, because they become precocious little assholes. And it's hard as a parent, mate, because you want to give the kids everything, but we know when you do, you're actually doing them a disservice. So I think a big thing about this performance and capacity gap is just having a bit of drive, and like you had it as a young kid. So for me, my story, as a middle distance runner, I was good, not great. So a bit of a shift on your story, but a similar theme. Meaning I won multiple state championships. I went down to Tasmania, the Institute of Sport. I did my best races in low-key meets. So if I'm looking out of 100, do you give a mark on this? Do you give, when you're talking to people, like give them a mark out of 100 or 10 as an example? Have you ever worked on that?
It depends what we're doing, but I do have ways of quantifying things with people around different processes, but yes.
So let's say if we look at your performance potential, if it was 100 as a runner, I probably hit 65 or 70. So I didn't close that delta, got to a good level, not great. But when I was honest with myself, I liked running, but I loved fitness and I loved making a difference to other people's lives. And at 27, I just went, look, I'm not going to do this for another couple of years and try and get to that next level because I just wasn't really passionate about it. But what I was passionate about, I'd seen you speak at Farlex, I'd seen Matt Church, I'd seen the great man Doug Maloof and a bunch of other speakers, and I went, I want to do that. So I shifted and went, right, let's say if there's a score out of 100 as a speaker, you mentioned that presentation at the Timber Yard. My first big presentation at Farlex was fucking woeful. It was ego-driven, which was masking insecurity. I reckon I had 350 to 400 people in the room, and I was speaking about periodization. I made it really detailed, lots of slides, tried to show how much I knew, and literally half the audience left in the first 15 minutes. I reckon by the end of the hour, I had 20% of the audience. I was mortified, but the gap that I had, mate, between that performance and also that capacity was I'd seen you, Matt, Doug, and others, and I did that presentation and I sucked. And there were one of two things I could have done: stick my head in the sand and go, fuck it, I'm never presenting on the public platform again. Or the other one was, I'm going to drill down and get good at this. And I chose the latter. And it's an evolution still to this day. I'm always learning. You don't arrive around performance. I think if you do, you stop.
Yeah, I love that story. It's so true. And it's like, all of this is just anecdotal, everyone. These are my experiences, right? I don't have data on this, but I would think that 70 or 80% of the population really underestimate their capacity, their potential, their possibilities. They don't understand what they can do. I think so many people are limited by fear of a myriad of things. You know, it's like, oh, embrace failure. Well, do embrace failure, because what's failure? Well, it's an outcome. Okay, is it the outcome you wanted? No, it's not. Did you learn anything? Like, if you turn down the emotion and get a bit of a break between the failure in inverted commas and then the processing, it's like I actually learned quite a few things. And, you know, to go from where I was to where I am now, working with, you know, bigger teams and companies, and I've spoken all over the world. I've probably spoken in 20 countries and all of that. That's great. But to be able to stand on a stage and be competent and to be doing a really good job and building rapport and connection and trust in the moment, and know how to engage and know how to tell stories and know how to read the room. And of course, I don't always create outcomes, but all that's been a 40-year process or a 35-year process. It's like, how do you become a black belt? Well, you get kicked in the dick 1,000 times over 10 years, right? Metaphorically, and you put up with the pain, and you be consistent, and you persevere, and you choose the hard thing, and you keep going back. And in the middle of all of that discomfort and joy and fun and evolution, you become a different version of you. You can't at 25 go, oh, fuck, I'm going to be different by next Wednesday. No, you're not. You might be doing different things, but you're not going to be different by next Wednesday.
Instagram tells me you can. You're in Instagram, and that sets up a lot of people. I'm sounding like I'm old, but that younger generation, so that borderline Gen Y, the millennials, it's really dangerous. I see some of the posts, what people do around getting success, and I don't comment because you just leave it, but it's erroneous. It's total bullshit. Like you just mentioned, 40 years. And I think that's one of the things we've lost, mate, that hard work takes time, decades, and helps to choose something you like. You know, you look at that Grit with Angela Duckworth, it's passion plus perseverance. So you love helping people. You know, the You Project, this is your third or fourth iteration. You've got to be bloody persistent and persevere after a few knockbacks. And I think that's one of the reasons why people get nowhere near that potential capacity, because they get one or two knocks. I'll stop. I'm just going to coast at 30%.
It's very, when we're talking about ourselves, it's very hard to be objective because you're analysing yourself, which is subjective analysis, right? So I can't be totally objective about me because I'm me. So you start with that knowledge. It's like the beginning of awareness. Self-awareness is to recognise your own lack of self-awareness. It's like this mind fuck, right? But you go, oh, it's like when somebody hears their voice on audio for the first time or sees themselves on TV or video camera, or, I worked on Channel 10 for 3 years, once a week in the mornings, 250,000 people around Australia every week.
Well, Craig Harper is with us this morning to get us off the weight loss merry-go-round once and for all. Good morning, Craig.
Good morning, Craig. Once and for all. Well, hopefully, because a lot of us spend our life getting on and off that weight loss merry-go-round, so perhaps this will be the end of the road for a few people, of which you are. I don't think that you're really in dire need of a body renovation, but maybe a little weeny bit of toning up.
When I got back to my office after day one, I watched myself. I'm like, oh my God, I'm a fucking idiot. Like, I hated what I saw, but they loved it. They're like, no, that was good. You were good. And I'm like, well, if they think that's good, giddy up, because I know that that's not me at 10, that's me at 3 or 4. And there wasn't ego in that. There was just, I knew what I could do. And over time, and I was never, a megastar or anything, but I ended up doing a pretty good job. But being committed to being okay with not being the best and not necessarily being the best anyway, and being okay with embarrassment or failure while genuinely striving to do the absolute best that I could, knowing that sometimes I will fuck it up, and that's okay. And it's that willingness, I think, to be okay with fucking up as long as you're trying, because fucking up is learning, fucking up is self-awareness, it's understanding, it's insight, but also being able to, which is rare in 2026, be okay with being wrong. Just wrong, right? And it's like, oh, I thought this, I even argued this. I even got all emotional. I even pointed fingers. Guess what? I was 100% wrong. Now, that's one of the other things too, is our need to be right is part of that gap. When you have to be right all the time, that's an inhibitor on your potential, because if people aren't echoing your thoughts and your ideas, I mentioned this actually on a podcast this morning, but new audience, I'll say it again, but I saw two things over the last 2 days. It was essentially the same comment. Somebody got on their high horse on Facebook and they gave this rant about whoever it is or whatever it was, and this is and this person. Rah, rah, rah. And at the end, they said, if you disagree with me, please unfriend me. And two different people did that about two different topics. And I was thinking, how much self-awareness you lack that you are saying this is how it is, according to me. If you don't agree with me, then go away, right? Because I am right and you are wrong. Also, I want to live in an echo chamber. I only want people following me who agree with me or think like, wow, if you really want to limit yourself, do that, be that. You and I might be diametrically opposed on an idea or a construct or a theory or a belief, right? I couldn't give a fuck. I like you. We don't have to align on things to be friends. I don't want to live in an echo chamber with Andrew. I don't want that. I want you to challenge me. I want me to challenge you. And then you'll go, okay, let's unpack that, because there's every chance, Andrew, because I get 23 things wrong every day. This could be one of them. This need to be right is it's like a handbrake on your potential.
It's horrible. I think a lot of it is insecurity, Mars, but healthy conflict, or some people don't like the word conflict, robust dialogue. It's a central tenet of a high-performing team. You need to, I was in New Zealand with a exec team last week, won't say the name of the team, but we were talking about this. Here's a high-functioning team. They paid zeros, lots and lots of money. And some of them, even at that stage of their career, find it difficult to lean in and have the conversation. If they don't, does it create? Corridor conversations. We all know this, but I think that's foundation, mate. Any team that I'm involved in, sporting team or corporate team or consulting, you want to be able to have that robust dialogue and actually to get differing opinion. If you had to rank yourself at the moment on your potential and where you are, what score would you give yourself? And I know that's a bit of an odd question.
Yeah, look, it depends on what area. If we're ranking me and my potential on flexibility versus my current actual flexibility, I'd give me a 2. I'm talking about physical, not cognitive, but
go career, you project impact you're having.
Yeah, right. I would say a 7. Honestly, I think I could do quite a bit better. I don't want to be a 10. I think being a 10 would depress me. But I don't think I'll ever be a 10 anyway. But if we're basing it on what's possible for me, I think I've had moments where I would say this, for me, this experience or this process or this presentation was about as close as I'll ever get to a 10. A couple of years ago, I did just a me workshop, Craig Harper Live, they're called, at Deakin in Melbourne, and I had 670 people. And it was 3 hours of magic. And this sounds weird, but it's almost like the magic happened despite me, not because of me. It was like I was in flow. I was in this state, and it was almost like it wasn't, but I was hovering above me, watching me do this, build this kind of, or help create this special moment. And I walked away from that and I'm like, oh, maybe I'm just a conduit to God, for God or something. But it was awesome, right? And then probably 2 gigs after that, I fucked up or hated myself. I'm not sure. But there are moments. But I think the human experience is you do great and you do shit. And you do a bit better, you learn. It's peaks and troughs of performance and emotion and experience. And I think the thing for people to think about with this gap that we're talking about, Andrew, is where am I now with, whatever the relative variable or measurement is for you in relation to whatever component of your existence. Where am I now? And where do you want to be? So to get clarity around that. But then okay, this is where I want to be. My next question would be, why do you want to be there? Now, if I'm 30% body fat, sorry to use a physiological variable, and I want to be 10% body fat, or if you said that to me, I'd go, cool, why? And if you said to me anything like, I want better self-esteem or any of these emotional or psychological variables which we attach to this physical outcome, I'd say maybe you being 10% body fat might make you a neurotic weirdo. I've seen it. It might make you less happy because now you're stressed about gaining weight and now you weigh everything that you put in your mouth and you track it and you're antisocial because you can't eat that. And now you've created a bunch of other issues because you achieved this outcome that you perhaps erroneously thought would make you better. And sometimes it does, by the way, but I would say the people that I coach and have coached over the years, I would say a disproportionate number compared to the general population of those successful, high-profile people are more miserable, are more medicated, sleep, anxiety, depression. And I'm not saying that's causal. I'm saying, but there's definitely a correlation there. I'm not saying being successful makes you miserable. I think the belief that I can fix my inner world by doing stuff in my outer world is something which is another podcast in its own kind of right. But that, understanding back to this kind of thing, where am I? Where do I want to be? Cool. So you figure out where you want to be. Now, let's try to turn down the emotion. As long as you have clarity and certainty about where you want to be and what you want your level of performance to be, then let's create a strategy. Let's create a non-negotiable timeline, accountability process. Let's think of this as you're building a house or you're building a brand or a business, but what you're doing is you're building a better version of you. The idea of non-negotiables, we talk about, what are your non-negotiables around this and that? But they're not really non-negotiable because people just stop them and start them when they want. Well, that's not non-negotiable, that's optional. So when someone says to me, how do you go out all the time and never drink beer? I go, because I never drink beer. So that doesn't require discipline, self-control, willpower, or motivation, because that's not something I do ever. And I'm not saying anyone should be following me. I'm saying I have very clear boundaries and rules and non-negotiables about what works for me to be somewhere close to my version of optimal. And I don't do that periodically. Like this is how I live. Now, for some people will go, oh, fuck, you're a hard ass, or you're this, or oh, that's full on, or oh, but you got to have a life. And I go, okay.
It is.
Sure. I go, guess what? The outcomes for me are good. I'm not saying be me. I'm not saying do what I do. Like you do you, but most people that I talk to that are doing their version of whatevs, they are not happy. They are not healthy. They are not where they want to be. If I ask 200 people in a room, put up your hand if right now you're really struggling with something, every hand goes up. Now, again, that's part of the human experience, but it's like if you really, not conceptually or not hypothetically, but if you actually want to move the needle, at some stage we need to step away from all the, not as in let them go, but the theory of the podcast and the theory of the book and the theory of this and that. And we need to be the pracademic. We need to be putting this shit into practice. Because transformation lives in the doing, not the knowing, not the understanding, not the planning, not the talking, not the theorizing. Nobody learns to play the piano by reading books on playing the fucking piano. Just get over there. Just how do you become a black belt? You become a white belt and you get smashed for 10 years and then that's where you end up.
We could go down so many rabbit holes. We always do when we converse.
Can I share a couple of other constructs which I think are really, while people are thinking about this, you interrupt me at any time, but so the performance capacity gap, as I said to you, like the stuff around this is the psychology of it is spoken in great detail in many kind of ways in the research, but
you're reading my mind. I was going to say, can you tell me what do you think causes it, or what are some of the scientific frameworks?
Well, let me mention a few others because they all correlate. Intention behavior gap, right? Intention. What's your intention? Yeah, cool. Great. What are you actually doing? Knowledge action gap. What do you know? Amazing. What are you doing with that knowledge to move the needle, to create change, to learn, to grow, to evolve? Confidence, competence. Like, okay, on the other end of the scale, we'll have people who are overly confident, but they're not actually doing anything. They're not actually, and there's a mix, of course, and then perception and reality. How do I see the world? How is the world? What do I think of my potential? What is my potential? How do I think others see me? This is my PhD, but how do others actually see me? Because it ain't the same. Ergo, back to the audio thing where we hear our voice and go, I don't sound like that. And everyone in the room goes, you sound exactly like that. Because we never experience us from any other perspective other than our own. And the last one is the effort outcome gap. So what is the effort required versus what is the effort that I'm actually making?
Deep, each one of those. I'll add two, and this comes more from thinking about this a lot lately, and you put a title on it early in the week. You've done this, I've done this, work with athletes, work with performing artists, work with musicians, work with corporates, and they've got so much potential, but they get nowhere near it. And I think a couple of other things that come into it is psychological skills. If you want your body to be fit, fast, flexible and strong, if you want to look like Harps when what are you now, 45, mid-40s, mate?
Yeah, my T-shirts are 45, bro.
You got to do reps and sets. If you want your brain to be fit, fast, flexible and strong, you got to do reps and sets. So practicing emotional regulation. And while it can be a big kitsch, hey, go do mindfulness, but doing 10 minutes a day of mindfulness is the research from John Kabat-Zinn, because he was a very good marketer and got all the money. But I think if you take any of those skills, mindfulness, breath work, just self-awareness, if you do 10 minutes a day, 5 or 6 days a week, you do that for 6 weeks, you're going to have a dramatic shift in your ability to regulate emotions. And we say this, we all have emotions, but when you get had by your emotions, fuck you, Harps, and fuck your horse. Whereas if you know how to ride that spike in cortisol and stress and adrenaline, and we talk about this regularly, you and I, the amygdala hijack, and you can settle down, you might just say fuck you, but it's under your breath. I think the second subset of skills on this, and again, you'll be going, duh, because you've done this, mate, for 40 plus years, is managing state. So when you're stepping into a performance moment, that was one of the things going back to running. I didn't know how to make nerves work for me. I did on a low key meet, but a big key meet, my nerves got the better of me. So when you step up to do a presentation or the interview or go on a date or just talk in a team meeting, knowing how to be in that sweet spot, so to be alert but not aroused and to have your emotions working for you. So I think those two things, and that's pretty low-lying fruit, to get some psychological skills. It's going to take a couple of months, but manage your state and actually give activities that are important. I call these a performance moment. The attention they deserve, not just in the hour meeting, presentation, turning up, but the preparation for it. Who's in the room? What does success look like? How am I going to show up and what prep do I need to do? So I think those two are big ones that people can implement. So train your psychological skills, know how to manage your state. And then when you have opportunities, you've got more likelihood to step into it emotionally, physically, psychologically, every other alley.
Yeah. I'm thinking about, so there's a whole kind of self-reflection, self-awareness, it's like that, just trying to, and again, it's hard, but like this little process of just being still. And I ask myself all the time, what is it like being around me? Not because I want people to love me or because I'm insecure, but because me understanding the Criag experience for my audience, be it 1 or 1,000, me having an insight into that allows me to be better for them. as well as theory of mind, understanding their processes, their thing. What's Andrew's version of reality in this moment? As I've said to you before, we're in the same chat at the same time on the same podcast, but we're having different experiences. It matters that I understand your experience, not because I need to agree or align, but if I understand you, then I can work with you better. I can solve problems with you better. I can self-regulate better. I can resolve conflict. I can lead, or I can be led. All of those things is just this understanding yourself, and more specifically, I don't want to open this door, but fuck it, understanding your mind. That is maybe beyond food and survival and shelter. That is maybe the biggest challenge of all time, to understand your mind, because your mind is essentially UHQ. It's your operational headquarters. It's where everything, it's where all the decisions are made, actions are initiated, data interpreted, stories told. It's that, that space where, there's the thing that's happening, and then there's our story about the thing that's happening. And then you think about, and we've covered this, but I think it's worth opening the door again. If you think something bad is happening, but something bad is not happening, your body will respond as though something bad's happening. And now you're in a stress state. And now you can't fucking breathe. And now you've got anxiety. And now your heart rate's through the roof. And your sympathetic nervous system's going nuts. And you're producing cortisol and adrenaline. And you're in this space where you're like, and it's completely self-created. But we don't know.
Have you heard Jackie Lauder, who you introduced me to? Thank you. But Jack's doing a bit of work with our business. Have you heard Jack talk about the different brain zones?
No.
Make sure you get to listen to this, Jack. We're giving you a good plug. So Jack talks about different brain zones. So zone 1 is the back part, or the primitive brain, and that's that fight or flight response. And being in zone 1, Jack says, is not bad, because there's times, so if you're talking about football, when you're on the defensive line, you want to be in zone 1 when you're defending, because you want to narrow your focus. It's short, sharp, and you're there defending. Okay? And it's that myopic view. But when you're in a relationship or running a business or catching up with friends, we want to get into zone 3, which is our smart brain. So your front part of that cerebral cortex. And what Jack does is she teaches people how to shift between zone 1 and zone 3. And zone 2, that's coming in through the limbic system. So that happens in like 0.02 of a nanosecond, happens automatically. But you can really learn to shift between zone 1 and 3. And some of the executive groups I've seen Jack do this with, it's really clever. And, she's an intelligent person, but she breaks it down and you hear them go, oh, I'm in zone 1 now. I'm having a zone 1 thought. So just tying that back in with what you said, understanding your brain and how it works, I think it's a huge part of this. It's a huge part of performance, because we've got this circuitry. We're not given a manual, and we just try and go on default or through experience. If you've got some good role models, maybe from a sporting background or performing arts, you might learn some of this. I find that, again, N=1, but if someone's had a bit of a performance background, they tend to take that into their next career. But if you haven't had that opportunity, that mentorship, that guidance, you could be 50, like an exec I had a few weeks ago. Lovely lady. I won't mention her name. We had a very personal, private conversation. She opened up and she'd learned some stuff about what we're doing on nervous system and brain. She just said, Andrew, I cannot believe I haven't learned this, and I'm 50. And she was quite regretful and remorseful of like, why haven't I done this? I'd learned all these mathematical formulas at school. And I had to fill up a tank, volume equals 4/3 pi r cubed, but I finished that formula in year 12. And I said to her, look, I get the emotion. Thank you for sharing. But how cool, you've now got this for your next 50 years. And you can take this to your kids and then grandkids and everyone else. So rather than being pissed off, process it. You're learning this now, pay it forward. But it was just an interesting reflection. And I did have that thought, yeah, God, what would have been different if she'd learned some of those skills to get closer to her potential gap 10, 15, 20 years earlier?
That's that self-understanding. That's that, like you called me Socrates before we started, tongue-in-cheek, because you said I look like an old stoic with my beard.
People who aren't watching this on our YouTube channel, Harps has got the trimmed beard, looking very, very sophisticated, intelligent.
I thought you were going to say old. But what's interesting about Socrates is he was the dude who said the beginning of wisdom is to know thyself. Me understanding me that metacognitive process of thinking about my thinking. Why do I think the way that where did my beliefs come from? Did I even choose my beliefs, or did I inherit them through social osmosis? Are my beliefs Dad's beliefs? Like, did Dad believed it, so I believe it? And or I was raised in this environment or around these people, or I was exposed to these ideas. What if I was exposed to those ideas? Or what if I grew up in a synagogue, not a church? Or what if I grew up an atheist? Or what if I grew up in this country, not that? Like the same person with the same genetics. What if all of my experiences had been different to now? Who would I be and how would I be and what would I think? And understanding that you have become what you have become largely unconsciously and largely unintentionally. And then to go, what to do with that? What to do with that? How do I get my self-limiting beliefs out of the way? How do I get my need for belonging out of the way? How do I get I don't want to disappoint my parents out of the way? How do I get the guilt out of the way? Because all of that shit, understandable as it is, that's a handbrake to your potential. That's getting in the way. Doesn't mean you've got to be disrespectful or disloyal to people, but for God's sake, understand yourself and think for yourself, about yourself, and stop trying to keep everyone in the world in your group happy, because one, you won't keep them happy. Two, you will exhaust yourself. And three, you will waste your potential.
So before I paraphrase some of the collective themes we've been talking about, why there is this performance and capacity gap, I've just got to go back in Christmas time. I grew a beard, and Sophia, who's our second youngest, so she's 5, we're in Fiji, and I thought I'm doing a good job. And she swam up to me in the pool and she went, "Daddy, how do you get the little bits there and there grey and not the other bits?" I'm like, two things are going to happen. Daddy's got to get some hair dye, which I couldn't find at Fiji, or the beard's coming off. It was just gorgeous. How do you get those little bits there grey? Thank you, Sophia. All right, let me summarise. There's a lot of cognitive frameworks, metacognition, which you're talking about. So if we're talking about how to help people close this gap between performance and their actual capacity, I think one is listening to a conversation, reflecting on a conversation like this, and it would be just locking in. And I asked you an open-ended question, and correctly you said, well, depends what area. And I said, let's look at the U project. So let's get our audience to think and reflect, Harps. Pick an area in your life right now: physical fitness, career, relationship. What would optimum look like? Let's go give it a score of 100. Where are you at now? So then you've got that gap between your absolute potential and where you are now. Now, we've spoken about what are some of the reasons. You very cerebral, smarty pants. When are you getting your PhD? It's not far away, huh?
I'm in I'm submitting very soon, like in the next 4 to 8 weeks. But I've written a bunch of papers, as you do when you do a research PhD, and they're all off at journals being considered and pondered, and I'm writing my thesis. So all the work has been done, but it's anyway, I don't want to bore you, but the problem is you've written an article on, or you've written a paper on your research, you send it off. Sometimes you don't hear, depending on the journal, you don't hear anything one way or the other for 4 or 5 months. And that's, so there's stuff that's out of your control in the timeline. But I would, hopefully next time we have a chat on your show anyway, that might be done and dusted. So that would be nice. But I think,
I can't wait to call you Dr. Harper.
Oh yeah, let's not worry about that. But for me, even talking about, the performance potential, blah, 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 or performance capacity, that for me was something that I had to, even going into high-level academia, not being a high-level academic, going, I actually don't belong in this room. One, could be everyone's granddad, sitting at Monash in my cubicle, just doing my thing, trying to figure out everything. Like, it's a new culture, it's a new language, there are new people, there's just this whole kind of dimensional that you step into where you're unfamiliar, you're incompetent, you're nervous, and you go, okay, this is fucking horrible, but I'm glad I'm here. And 6 years, dude. Obviously, I switched from full-time to part-time because of my relatively hectic schedule, but you're like, oh, I'm different now. I'm still me at my core, but I know different things. I can do different things. My understanding has grown. My capacity has grown. I think my ability to have this conversation with you is better than it was 6 years ago. And I think even in that, you're in your 50s, I think, but me at 62, it's like, are you lower? What are you, 48 or something?
Early 50s.
Yeah. I just think practically and realistically, like even one of the questions that I ask is, well, not to impress anyone or not to, I don't know, for any outward appearance, but it's like, well, how highly functioning can I be at my age? Like, can my brain work better than when I was 32? Can I still do chin-ups? Can I go run 10Ks? Can I solve problems? Can I be creative? Can I learn new things? Can I adapt? I think these are great questions for anyone at any age. And the answer to all of those questions for most of us is yes. So rather than, I think before retirement, people almost
Which is
retire.
A horrible word. It's a shit word.
Yeah, they retire their potential. They retire their brain. They retire their capacity for learning. And I know that's probably not most of your listeners, but a lot of people do. It's like, it's almost like they put the cue in the rack. I'm like, bro, you don't know, or Brosephine, you do not know how much cool shit you could do, that apart from all the great stuff, you're going to be so much more fulfilled and excited rather than just sliding towards the finish line with a fucking pie in your hand.
Brosephine. That's been a big take out of this one today, Harps.
Yeah. Well, we've got to, I don't want to say it, but
I've Googled Marcus Aurelius to get a few quotes on the Stoics. Here's a really good one. Now, these dudes were around thousands of years ago. So Marcus Aurelius on control. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. So he was saying before we had neuroscience, PhDs, and pulling all this physical, psychological stuff together, it's crazy, isn't it? You look back at some of those quotes, I'll pick one or two other ones. On perspective, waste no time arguing about what a good man or woman should be one. It's all about being present. Crazy. On adversity, choose not to be harmed and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed and you haven't been. So he's talking about self-efficacy and self-awareness and self-control thousands of years ago. So if we stitch all this stuff together in the modern era and try and give it a sort of stoic frame, a multitude of reasons why there's a gap between someone's performance and between their capacity. I mentioned psychological skills. I spoke about state management. You've spoken about self-esteem, self-efficacy, self-talk, metacognition. So there's a lot of psychological, cognitive ones, a few physical ones that can get in the way because we're not a head in the stick. So we summarise, there's a multitude of reasons, modelling, role modelling, environment, so many reasons why there's a gap for people.
Well, I think also everything from simple things like anxiety, like lack of focus, poor preparation, fatigue, zero motivation, distractions, environmental stressors, lack of belief. It's like there is a myriad of things, but they affect all of us. I still lack confidence with lots of things. Over the last 6 years, I've had to do 4 academic milestones where I, the professional speaker, go and stand in front of 4 super duper academics who make me look like a plant intellectually. And nobody in the room would think this guy is a professional speaker. Like, I was so nervous. I was so shit because you know what? In that environment, how well you speak or how funny you are or how many stories you have, nobody cares. And by the way, none of the people that are assessing you right now, Craig, to get your mid-canned review or your final review, they don't know you. They don't care about you. You're number 30571. That's you. You're the candidate in front of... And terrified. I was talking to 4 people. I was terrified. You put me in front of 4,000. I'm excited. It's context dependent. But over the course of those 4, which was over, a bunch of years, I got slightly better. But it's back to that. Yeah. So I think being scared and being inefficient and ineffective is okay, as long as we're recognizing what we need to work on over time and we're actually stepping into it. I want to say one interesting thing while you're talking about the Stoics, and here's an interesting thing that people wouldn't think of. Firstly, the word mind. The word mind is only about 400 or 500 years old as that English word mind. Also, psychology as a field of research or as a science is only about 150 years old. Like the psychology of this or that, we're 300,000 years old as Homo sapiens, allegedly. I think they're saying it's more now. But, for the whole time that we've been around as a species, psychology hasn't been a thing. But human behavior has been analysed in a myriad of ways over millennia. And, I'm sure there were lots of people before the Stoics, but they were essentially talking about what we're talking about 2,500, 3,000, 5,000 years ago. None of this is new.
It's not new, but we're not putting it together. And I know you love your science. I did a bit of research, so I've got to use this quote, mate, or Shannon's going to say, why do we do the research with harps? It's a good one. It's a research from the Corporate Executive Board. Found that high-performing individuals typically have three things working together. Number one is aspiration, the motivation to step up and take on greater responsibility. Number two, ability, the capability to deal with complexity and challenges. As we've spoken about today, that is improved with training. And number three, engagement, staying committed long enough to grow. 40 years in business, you might just do all right, young fella. And here's the interesting part. The research found less than half of the high capability employees feel fully engaged, which means a lot of capable people never actually convert that into consistent performance. So one thing it also showed is that capability isn't just about talent. Research showed that high potential performers typically have those three things working together. I found that really interesting. So aspirational, so you're looking at something you're wanting to move towards. So that would be linking to a lot of the research around purpose. Ability, which is dealing with complexity and challenges, not just easiness, and that engagement or that passion piece.
Love it. Yeah, I've got one question which I want to share with everybody that they can use. And the question is, when you get up every morning and you have your coffee or your tea and you have your little moment where 1 or 2 minutes, I ask myself this question every day, and this is true, or a version of this. And the question is, in terms of what I want to do, be, create and change today, or maybe need to do, in terms of what I need to do, be, create or change today, where should my attention be? What needs to have my attention? What needs to have my focus? Because we waste so much cognitive, emotional, physical energy on shit that doesn't serve us. So even that awareness around how much of my focus, concentration, energy am I wasting every day on bullshit that actually brings me down, not up?
What do I need to do, need, be and create today? What a great frame for every single day. It really pulls in a lot of that. Mindfulness, presence, focus, intentional control.
Yeah. If you want to simplify it in terms of who I want to be and how I want to be, where should my attention be today?
This is a big topic, isn't it? And
that's why I said you and I could do 3 days of this, but you and I could run a series of workshops on navigating all this stuff around self-awareness, self-regulation, right through to self-actualization. Some topics are relevant to 40% of the audience. This is everyone. This is 100% of the audience.
And everyone's going to be in different pathways, different awareness, skills, knowledge. And when you're feeling stressed and life shit, it's hard, isn't it? Like when you've nailing stuff at work, you're getting feedback from people around you, you've got that multiplier effect, but that's life. And I think that's why you've got to play the long game. Like I look at that research, engagement, staying committed long enough to grow. So I really think as we sum up, that gap, it's not going to happen overnight. Like you said, you don't do this by Wednesday. You've got to be patient on this, but at the same time, you've got to be hasty enough to get some change, that you're getting some feedback, that it's working, so you keep going. It's that dance between the two.
Yes. And self-awareness, not self-loathing. Don't beat yourself up. You're okay. If you're listening to this, and I would be wildly astounded if you don't have a lot more potential and a lot more capacity than you're currently using or stepping into or even understand at this point in time. So it's good news. It's good news, but we've got to do the work.
I've only got one more question. I've been holding this. You said you're a 7 out of 10.
Yes.
Is that where you want to be?
I'm pretty happy being a 7. Like I said, across the board, I would say 7. I think there are times when I have moments of 10. I approach 10. me being 10 out of 10 at something could be Andrew being 6 out of 10, because I'm just talking about what is my capacity. You know, my training partner is a multiple-time Mr. Australia, former IFBB pro, Me training at 10 out of 10 is him training at 5. You know, me deadlifting a certain weight is him warming up. But me lifting deadlifting a certain weight is somebody else killing themselves. So it's all relative to us. And I think that if we, like I said at the start, like comparison is good if it's you comparing you to you over time.
Yeah, I was just curious because if you're at 7, is getting to an 8 going to make you any happier? Any different in parts of your life?
Now, this is another conversation. That is such a fucking smart question, because here's the thing. It's like, what is the correlation between optimizing oneself, which I think is a good idea, depending, can I be the guy who doesn't have much? Can I be the guy who doesn't do much, but also be the guy who's not anxious, the guy who's calm, the guy who's content? You know, and I think, like, my mum and dad are really quite unwell at the moment. They're both 86, and without giving away too much details, like when I sit with them or I be with them, and it's like, you know, without being too cheesy, all that matters is them. All that matters is love. All that matters is that they are okay. You know, but that doesn't mean we're not going to have the human journey with goals and experiences and peaks and troughs. But like sometimes, like I'm in the middle of this process at the moment, throwing out basically 80% of everything I have in this house, because I do not need it. I'm giving away really good things, but it's a really good thing that I don't use or need. So I'm giving it to someone who does use it or need it. And it's so fucking liberating. It's like that attachment. There's another one we could do, attachment theory.
I think we've got our next 2 or 3 poddies.
Oh, we're ready. We're set for years.
Thank you for planting the seed, and thank you for your time. It's got me thinking more. I often get off a conversation, and a podcast with you is a relaxed conversation that you press record. And I know I'm going to be reflecting about this a lot over the next few weeks.
Well, mate, you're a good man. You're doing good things, and I know your audience love you. And I appreciate you, and thanks for the opportunity to speak to your folk. It's great.
Thank you, oh wise one. And keep the beard. It suits you.
I'll do my best.